Hey, it's me, Rob Ryan. I am back with another really important conversation of entrepreneurial thinkers with me. In a world where a quarter of the world probably thinks, or at least a quarter of the United States population thinks that climate science and science in general is just nonsense or bullshit or simply not true. We need to have reasonable, thoughtful, deep, long conversations with really smart people who appreciate that both science, climate technology, climate change, and the realities and opportunities of those topics are absolutely true, are absolutely facts, and are inevitably our future. And that's the conversation I got to have today with Matt Petersen, who sat down with me from the other side of Los Angeles. He is the CEO of LACI, otherwise known as the Los Angeles Cleantech Incubator, which is a catalytic organization in the world of clean, green economies and technology developments across the country, and arguably, I would say, across the world from here in LA. And Matt, as its CEO and leader, is not just the leader of this organization, but has been a thought leader and a public policy leader in climate, in green and clean technology and energy for decades, professionally and personally. And we got a chance to sit down and talk about this all-important topic from a variety of different points of view. So if you're an entrepreneur, if you're an investor, if you're a stakeholder, if you're a public policy person, if you're a politician or a leader, if you're a mayor in a city around the United States, this is the conversation that you want to learn from and hear, because it is pointing us towards where we're going. It is really looking towards the future, not so much how we got here, and really kind of helping us to understand to keep our heads down and stay focused on the facts amidst the noise and the distractions of the political environment that we live in early 2025. So we hope you enjoy this conversation as much as Matt and I did making it for
you. We are so grateful to be supported by these community champions: Sales MD, Team Friday, Realist Lab, Kiana Patterson, Diego Chavez, Jer Boucher, Heather Ryder, Janine Sua, Lily Roca, and Steve Kernan.
Hola, hello, hi, bienvenido, and welcome back, or welcome to Entrepreneurial Thinkers. As you know, or you may be just learning, this is the show where I get to have weekly conversations with some of the best and brightest entrepreneurial thinkers across all sectors and segments of society and industry, as we come together to try to leave the world a little bit better than we found it, which I think we all agree we need to try and do a little bit more of now than maybe we did a couple of months ago. Today, I am super excited to be joined by Matt Petersen, the CEO of Los Angeles Cleantech Incubator, or I'm just going to refer to it as LACI for the rest of the show because it's a lot easier to say. But before we get a chance to meet him, let me go ahead and tell you a little bit about him and his vast experiences and background, right? So he not only is a good guy and a proud dad and brings a lot of just positive energy to what he does on a daily basis, but he's just got a vast and really kind of wide-ranging professional and personal life that I want to make sure we understand as we get into this. So Matt's been at the forefront of creating an inclusive green economy, empowering startups and revolutionizing markets through bold policies, partnerships, and pilot programs at LACI since 2017-ish, I think. But Matt's commitment to a greener, cleaner, and more prosperous future for Los Angeles and the country, and really the world, far predates him taking over leadership at LACI. Since the mid-1990s as the CEO of Global Green USA, which is the local outpost of Green Cross International, his years as the City of Los Angeles' Chief Sustainability Officer, his role as the Director and Chair of Metro Water District's Climate Adaptation Task Force, and countless other civic and nonprofit leadership contributions, such as his current role with the Climate Makers program, which he's going to tell us all about. Matt's passion for a better and more sustainable world is unassailable. Here in LA, this has put him at the forefront of some of the most important and incredible advancements imaginable. He's championed transportation electrification. He's done work with his teams to create localized climate energy innovation programming and create greater access to more opportunities for underrepresented founders, which is a big part of what we're going to highlight and talk about today as well. He's essentially, in my humble opinion, shaping the sustainable future of Los Angeles and the world. He has a vision for building a sustainable and inhabitable modern city at scale that can regularly manifest itself in innovative programming, investment models, private-public collaborations that prove his deep-seated entrepreneurial thinking, in my opinion. We see this experience and belief showing up across LA, especially as our city goes through now not only a recovery and rebuilding process in the wake of our LA fires that we experienced back in January, which many of you have heard about, but also in preparation for two massive world-class sporting events that are coming online here. We're actually more than two now that I think about it. The Super Bowl, the World Cup in 26, and then the Olympics and Paralympics in 28. So in my humble opinion, it's a pleasure to welcome this passionate family man, lover of travel, and humble but impassioned leader in our city, Matt Petersen. How are you, buddy? Welcome to Entrepreneurial Thinkers.
Thanks, Rob. I appreciate you having me, and great to be with you.
I've got a lot to talk about. Just if we tried to pick apart the intro, there's a lot of topics to discuss, and I want to try and touch on them as many as we can today while being respectful of your time. So I'm going to open up with kind of a big picture question, and please take this in any direction you'd like. But this is colored by maybe kind of our current political climate here in the U.S., which we can talk about or not talk about as much or as little as you'd like. But in light of that, that's where I got this first question, right? Is a sustainable, clean, green economy an inevitability, regardless of kind of the shifting winds of political leadership? Yes, no, and why?
A great question, Rob. And first of all, thanks for your passion for Los Angeles and entrepreneurial thinking and solutions. You're a real resource and asset to our region. So thank you for all you do.
Appreciate that.
The answer to your question is, the short answer is yes, it's inevitability. Obviously, we're facing lots of headwinds right now with a sort of unfortunate and odd, if some would say not odd, but I think odd animus towards clean technologies. And because all of the solutions of the startups we're supporting or other incubators across the country, we help facilitate a national coalition of clean energy incubators from every corner of the country, red states, blue states. And all of the entrepreneurs we're supporting are American entrepreneurs. They're here to help create local jobs, create drive innovation, grow economies at the regional level, and provide solutions that people need. Now, so that's the odd part. But the reality is we're not going to put the genie back in the bottle now.
Right.
How we go about things and the timeline of the transition, I think, will be affected. The ability of, I think everybody's sort of, whatever your reaction, whatever adjective you would use, is sort of overwhelmed by the flood the zone, and we have some important things we got to keep our eye on the ball for. And I think that I don't know what the right word is. Sometimes it's infuriating, sometimes it's depressing, but
Right. Some
we can't
days.
give up. We can't give in to hopelessness, and
Yeah.
we need to channel those energies to keep focused on how do we keep moving forward on clean energy, transportation, electrification, because we know it's going to improve people's lives. We know it's going to has a better ROI, long-term life cycle savings, and help people who are afflicted with, the worst air pollution imaginable in places like Wilmington, along where the trucks pick up the goods from the ports of LA and Long Beach. It's just nonsensical to try to slow this transition, but that's what's happening. So we got to
Yeah, I was
keep
going to say, but yet here we are, right?
Here we are. And so we got to keep our eye on the ball. We got to lift up California's right to regulate, and show how we've grown the economy of California to be the fifth and potentially soon the fourth largest economy in the world by leaning into climate innovation in terms of policy and technology through policy entrepreneurs and technology entrepreneurs. And those market signals that policymakers have sent for decades out of California was what made Tesla possible. Now, they don't. Nobody can take responsibility from a policymaker standpoint for Tesla's success, or let alone what people are reacting to now.
Yeah. That's a whole other beast.
But there's so many other stories of where the ecosystem California has created, that pioneer spirit, that policy innovation, that sends the market signals to entrepreneurs that I think we need to embrace and lift up and support and think about as we move towards the Super Bowl, the World Cup, uh, the Olympic and Paralympic Games in 2028. How do we welcome the world to a region that's a city and a state that's leading by example on climate innovation, and
Yeah.
that things that people benefit from, the way they move around, are solutions that, but for California and LA's leadership, wouldn't be in place. There'll be forces, practical to political, trying to hold that back or slowing it down. But I think there's an enormous amount of opportunity there for us to put that on the world stage. And I think that's where we need to keep focused here in LA,
Yep.
along with the rebuilding after the fires.
I love, and I passionately agree with probably just about everything you're going to share today, but definitely with this opening commentary. I love that you subtly and then very specifically kind of reference in your argument, in your story for the case for why this is important, kind of the economic gains, right? I think for so long, and I'm curious because again, you've spent a lifetime working on this, so I'm curious your opinion in this. Like for so long, it felt like maybe the discussion around green technology, clean technology, the environment, saving the planet, those types of topics or themes were almost, I don't know what the word, maybe almost charitable, right? In the way that they were like, oh, it's like a nice to have, right? As we would say in pure business terms, like a nice to have. And no, this isn't a nice to have. Like you just made a case for like a large portion of the state and the region's economic vitality has been as a result of it, or you made a case for in the Wilmington kind of trucking transit corridor that bisects the city, that the welfare, the literal lifespan, the wealth and welfare of people in their neighborhoods and their homes is directly impacted by this. So have we crossed a Rubicon now where this is the normal way we speak about green technology, clean technology, the greener economy is that it is basically a fundamental economic / welfare argument now. It's no longer just a nice to have.
Yeah, no, I think it is an economic imperative. I think, I think that the sad and tragic part of this is that climate science has been politicized. We see the realities of the climate crisis affecting our communities increasingly every day. And so making the scientific and some would say moral argument, there is a morality here. Do we want humanity to survive, or hopefully help humanity to thrive in future generations? Because uh, the planet will be fine without us, but we can't live without a healthy planet, and so in a healthy climate.
Yeah.
And so that's really the fundamental questions. But if be given it's been so politicized, where can you focus on the zeitgeist? If, as you said, I think that really it is the job creation, it's the economic opportunity, and the economic benefit from reducing air pollution upon frontline communities. There's the human mortality and illness, like, it's proven. There's no question mark there. But those core economic growth and job creation um, points are really what's critical.
And that cuts across red state, red city, blue city. I would think. Please tell us, right? I would think that a Republican representative from a dominantly Republican state who has a couple of modest-sized cities in his or her state would have just as much interest in the opportunity to develop new jobs, new technologies, open up new plants, new facilities, new manufacturing places that are producing clean and green technology as much as they would fossil fuel industry stuff? Or is it that where those fossil fuel industries are present in those places, then you get the kind of counter lobbying that says, we don't want you to do that?
Well, I think if you look at places like Georgia, where you've seen, even before the Inflation Reduction Act, there was a lot of investment going into Georgia, but since, especially into battery plants and EV manufacturing. other clean technologies. It's a place where the state, Georgia and Atlanta, were a bit ahead of other southern states in pushing for EV adoption and having incentives. And so I think you had um, a dominant electric utility in Georgia Power. Really all swim in the same direction. How do we sell more electricity? How do we, used to have a pretty dirty power mix, and it's improving, has ways to go. But, I think if you look at that, and there are other states where since the Inflation Reduction Act and the CHIPS and Science Act, that you've seen enormous investments that are really all about economic opportunity and job creation. And
Yeah.
it's in Arizona or Tennessee or Georgia or, you know, Arizona's a purple state, but, these states where Republicans are in power, and this isn't about climate crisis for them, maybe for some, but it's more about like how do we really create jobs and grow the economy. These are
Yeah.
huge economic opportunities, including in Ohio, where you've got what they call Voltage Valley, that is really an incredible place where you've seen a lot of investment in manufacturing and other, of again, EVs and batteries, and from traditional manufacturers like GM and others. So this is undeniable. And so this culture war representation of it in Washington is unfortunate, but I think we're going to see the pendulum swing back because there are so many Republicans seeing the benefits from these
Yeah.
investments.
That's awesome. And there's the encouragement to hang on to on the disappointing or frustrating days, right? The headlines seem to be grabbing all our attention. Like you said, flood the zone, like just overwhelm us with clips and bits and headlines and tweets or truths or whatever the hell they call them. But the reality is what's slowly, methodically kind of just happening behind the scenes,
Yeah.
regardless,
Yeah.
because it's
We have
opportunity.
seen some investments pull out, right? I mean, it's the confusion, particularly, but there's a lot of it that's still moving forward. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, before we go a lot more deep into a variety of different topics, highlighting some of what you guys are doing at LACI, I want to go way, way back in the Wayback Machine here. Like, what was it in your young life that sparked a passion for all of this?
a good question. My dad, God rest his soul, he passed away a couple years ago. He told me a story that we were at the park. We lived across the street from this place called Griseda Park in Modesto, and it was always busy on the weekends. And it was like a Sunday afternoon, and this is probably early 70s. Uh, well, I know it was early 70s, and so there was a lot of trash around on the ground, and I think, just picking up litter had not quite taken hold. And I looked up at him. He says the story. I was 4 or 5, and I said, "Dad, we got to do something to take care of our planet."
Okay, there you go.
And as I reflect back, like, okay, what caused me as a kid to say that? And I remember I have this vivid memory of my brother a little bit before that, because we lived at a different house, is why I can sequentially have this memory and recall it. Is he made a Super 8 film probably for the 1970 or 1971 Earth Day, where
Okay.
he did close-ups of pollution from the car tailpipe, the jet flying overhead. Modesto, we used to have jet service, and things like that. And I think that just stuck in my head, and
Obviously.
reflected on it when I was with my dad. As I got older, I just saw some of the stuff going on where Modesto is an agricultural area, and it see these, you know, yeah, we need housing, but at the same time, part of me reacted to plowing under of orchards with sort of like, that doesn't make sense. Like, why are we doing that as a kid? And just seeing the tension in that. Uh, so those are the formative, memories.
That's awesome.
The
And
initially.
I asked partially selfishly motivated. I got a text earlier from my niece, who's 17, a junior in high school down in Orange County, and she was bragging to me very excitedly that she has gotten accepted to and decided to go spend a few weeks this summer in Sacramento at a like public policy leadership summit or youth thing of some sort, right?
That's
Like a
great.
3 week. Yeah, and she's very. She has been. She's that Gen Z / Gen Alpha border. Encouragement for us old guys is that the future is in bright hands. She has looked at the current climate and been angered by it and taken the
Yeah.
role of resistance and said, like, I think this is it, Uncle Rob. I
Yeah.
think I want to study public policy, and I'm definitely interested in the environment. And so like this, she'll listen to this episode with great interest. So to
Yeah.
hear something as simple as like you got exposed to it by family, as a kid, I'm sure that'll resonate with her and
Well,
some of her friends. So.
I'll tell one other story just because what you just shared, and tell her I think it's a great idea and I hope she does it. And I was able to intern in Sacramento for a state senator one summer. And yeah, of course, I got credit for my undergrad, and it was unpaid, but I, you know, it was a great experience. We created this Capital Intern Association and
Oh
did
wow.
things that were pretty cool. And but more importantly, I remember being like talking to people about this was 1987. So I'm dating myself, but it was they were like, you should get involved in the presidential campaign next year, now. And so I reached out to every candidate at the time that I was sort of interested in. Uh, at the time, Joe Biden, but then he got out of the race.
Right, the
Gephardt,
first time, yep.
and Michael Dukakis, Bruce Babbitt. Um, Anyways, the one campaign I got a response out of was the Dukakis campaign, and I went back to school after the summer and um, organized, like a debate watch party at my house, our apartment, and then did this totally cool satellite call-in because my alma mater, Chico State, had one of the few satellite hookups in California, and so we got to
Wow.
do one question with Governor Dukakis at
Oh
where
man,
he
how
was
cool.
doing the overall event, and um, anyways, and then then ended up taking a year off from college and working on the campaign across the country, like changed my life.
Obviously,
It
right?
gave me the experience and the relationships that sort of shaped me as a human and sent me in this direction and reinforced this direction for me.
That's awesome. All right, so you're a California guy, Central California guy, but I want you to help me explore a little bit of Southern California. This is a question that I would not have asked you had we interviewed at the end of last year or December or even the first week of January. But here we live in the aftermath of,
Yeah.
again, the LA fires, right? So help us understand how out of this tragedy comes a great opportunity for us to
Yeah.
build or just recover and rebuild better and differently, right? I mean, I know you're very passionate about this, and I also know you're lending a lot of your energy and expertise to it. So help us get a sense of kind of what's going on today, and then also like how do we use this tragic moment to go forward and actually literally build a better, more sustainable, at least sections of Los Angeles.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Rob. I think, what we've experienced here in LA is traumatized everybody that lives in LA, whether you were affected directly or not. It's just, we've all lived through fires in this region, earthquakes, if you've been here a long time. And the 94 earthquake was probably, the last time we had a region-wide event that affected everybody. Obviously, that devastated a lot different neighborhoods and had a different sort of impact. But this was, the worst climate disaster we've seen since Hurricane Katrina. And while the number of lives lost was a lot fewer, thankfully, and the nature of the disaster was different, it is a reality of the climate crisis we knew and have known for a long time would come to this more extreme weather, uh, extreme drought, extreme precipitation, uh, followed by more drought, um, and then extreme weather. And yeah, you can't blame the Santa Anas on the climate crisis, but these other factors we know are all related, and the worsening climate whiplash. Uh, but and I don't think anybody. Well, we've seen the down, and then with extreme heat in there as well, of course, during making the periods of drought and further depriving uh, the 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 landscape from just making it more of a tinderbox, all adding up. And yes, where we've built our homes, we've known that nature urban land interface is vulnerable. Remember when I first moved to LA, the Malibu fires were happening. Gosh, was that 93? And it's really hard, but this is a beautiful place. We need places to live. Obviously, these places in the hills, adjacent to the hills, are attractive to homeowners for a lot of reasons. Um, but to your point, your question, there is in every disaster, there is a potential silver lining. It's whether we really embrace it or not. Um, After Hurricane Katrina going into New Orleans, first of all, just watching every level of government fail our own citizens in this
Right.
country was alarming to everybody. And I had this crazy idea that how could we rebuild New Orleans, be the first truly green city in America? Now, put a lot of ideas. We were able to make progress on several of them. With really school reconstruction and new construction being perhaps one of the best successes we had of leveraging $2 billion in school construction back in 95 and 6 and excuse me 2005, 6, 7, and 8. Um, but here we are, and we really need to help homeowners and communities and schools and churches and other institutions and businesses rebuild, and developers rebuild better. We you know well, we need to move as quickly as possible and reduce the barriers because we know it takes way too long to build anything in LA if you're trying to
Right.
build housing. And some of it's for very good reason.
Yep,
Uh,
exactly. Yeah.
and
This
some
wasn't
of
like
it
made up
is
stuff. These weren't like
bureaucracy.
obstacles that were just whimsically thrown into the system for no reasons.
So we really need to focus on that. It's a policy innovation opportunity of how do we find ways to fast track solutions, um, and at the same time help the greater good of the community, make sure people are protected. So, what's that nature-urban interface? There need to be buffer zones. How do we rebuild, of course, more fire resilient homes, but while at the same time, energy efficiency and the same things that improve the energy efficiency of a home, improve the fire resistance, better windows,
Yeah,
different ventilation, all the things that help a home survive. Um, and a lot of those materials are more sustainable. So it's an opportunity, and so it's chair of this commission that Supervisor Horvath created. We're independent, but so we don't report back to the Board of Supervisors per se. We're going to reach out to every policymaker and everybody who listen. Uh, Really, the only voices that are explicitly out there focusing on resiliency and sustainability. So how do we help the homeowners? And so the fact that we're going to see a lot of people who decide not to return. I was listening
sure.
to a meeting today who somebody from elected official who is constituents in Altadena was talking about there's 60 lots available for sale at or 60 lots have sold that at or below market value. Uh, People don't want to put up with the time, the cost. They may not have. They may have been underinsured, uninsured. Historical legacy of lack ownership in Altadena. Maybe they have owned their home and they didn't have a mortgage, and maybe they didn't have insurance because it wasn't required. Like, who knows? Like all these situations add up, and of course, insurance companies maybe are. they're- It's hard to get the repayment or when it'll come, the insurance checks and how long that takes. So it's just so much uncertainty. And if you're older, you're probably going to leave.
Sure. Yeah. Which there was a
Um,
good chunk of the populations in both those places that were like
yeah.
exceptionally older homeowners that have owned those
So we're,
places for
anyways,
30 or
we're
40, 50
from
years.
a commission hat. That's what we're focused on. From a LACI hat, we're trying to see what we can do to help identify startup innovation that can help. We have a startup that does wildfire detection remotely. How do we better protect and alert communities? Uh, and of course, clean energy and other things that add resiliency.
Yeah.
Um, so we're going to be looking at those opportunities. How do we help train people for different types of jobs and careers if they lost their job or in these communities? So
Are
it's
there
it's
are there
tough.
lessons and takeaway like are there opportunities beyond just the scope of the rebuild, right? So are there lessons and things that we could learn, or policy innovations, as you say, or technology innovations, sustainable building, that then we can learn and apply to our broader need to, and most likely coming trend of building lots more housing, right? Like just this general desire to build more housing across Southern California or the
Yeah.
whole state. Like, are there things that we're going to learn in the rebuild of the fire that then could make it easier for us to encourage more or incentivize more general development?
Yeah. I mean, I think so. We'll see. You
Yeah.
know, it's a it's a big question mark, but that's the hope and the intention is how do you, are there components of manufactured housing, modular housing, uh, components of the homes that can be modularly built and brought in, but uh, there's going to be supply chain issues and increased
Yeah.
costs due to supply chain issues. There's going to be labor shortages. Like, how do we? There's gonna be a lot to navigate, but out of
Yeah.
that, how do we see what we can do to rebuild better and try to find ways to rebuild more affordably while being as resilient as possible?
Right. You hit on something just in the answers to the rebuild questions. Startups involve potentially government, different branches of government, nonprofit, philanthropic organizations, independent commissions. If we go back up macro, kind of in your broader work that you do across the country and throughout your career, is it essentially integral? Like, is it just dependent? The success in these types of reinvention of an economy into a clean economy or green technologies as you transition away from fossil fuels, is it just dependent upon collaboration between the private sector, government, philanthropy, universities? I mean, you've worked in all of them, it seems like, and to the outside guy, it seems obvious that collaboration is required. But then when I hear of why we don't make more progress, it a lot of times seems like it's those different appendages not working well with each other. So if
Right.
you can help us understand that reality a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I think there are a lot of things that hamstring and tie the hands of policymakers in terms of innovation. Again, some of it for very good reasons, some of it for, maybe not so good reasons, or just whatever. It's historical or contextual. But like when I was in the mayor's office, we would try to pilot solutions from startups and corporates, like just to see. Now the corporates could afford to pay for the cost of the pilots. Startups generally can't. And for good reason. We don't have sole source procurement. We can't do that. But like how do you pilot a solution and see what works and learn from it? Um, So at LACI, we've created what we call our innovation sandbox, where we have the policymakers, the startup entrepreneurs, and others all in there together. Um, and we get visibility so we do an RFI, we get the cities to respond to it, sort of like a grant. They opt into it, therefore they get this permission to be able to participate in pilot solutions. We then go out to the technology providers and see what technology and business model solutions, along with policy innovations, we can find. And uh, and we did that in Santa Monica and downtown LA with zero emissions delivery, looking at technology and policy and business model. How do you, by business model, like how do you pivot to technology to meet a different market need? Um, and really, it just, we make it too hard sometimes to innovate. And we've been doing our National City Climate Innovation Challenge for the last year and a half or so. And like every city has its own challenges, but we looked at New York, where we're doing a couple pilots, and one is they've created a platform of like, how do you go from piloting to scaling if it works? Because if you have to put a startup through they pilot and then, okay, well, it works, let's do an RFP and everybody competes. It's really hard. But if the solution works and, you had some procurement process up front to select the startup, why shouldn't you be able to scale it? So, New York has had some innovation around that. We hope to bring back to LA. Um, they're doing an indirect source rule, as was done in the Inland Empire, to control pollution from and emissions from the trucks, diesel trucks, the first to have heavy duty and the medium duty trucks out in the Inland Empire. New York's taking a similar approach. So, I think it's the other thing. It's not just partnership, but how do we learn from others?
Right. Yeah.
Mayors, when I used to work for Garcetti, they would get in the room and say, "Hey, let's have an award who's best at stealing an idea from another city." Why not?
Right. I mean, hey, as long as it works, right? There's no secrets. We all need the progress.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want you to talk about LACI and kind of give us the commercial. One of the things that stood out to me that I would love for you to highlight before you give me the commercial of what it is and what it does and where it's going. In my preparation for this, I noticed LACI now says you've onboarded more than 500 companies into the portfolio. I know from my own experiences in some relationships that a number of those folks come from our diverse neighborhoods across Los Angeles. Some might even call it kind of like untraditional, non-conventional places. So if you have some examples you'd like to tell us about that fit that profile, I'd love for you to do that. And then we'll unpack LACI, kind of the business commercial.
When I got to LACI in 2017, we really, the organization led by Estelle Reyes, who joined a little bit before I got there, was leading an effort to really better identify and recruit underrepresented founders, which are traditionally, predominantly Black, Brown, and women founders. Um, and uh, so as we look to integrate that into the organizational and programmatic design, um, we thought about different ways we can make people feel welcome and supported, because peer-to-peer communication and marketing and word of mouth is the best sort of testament to is a place somebody feels that they can thrive. And so those early efforts really led to intention, a set of goals we've set to increase representation. We still struggle to get to 50% or more on average of women entrepreneurs. It's usually more 30 to 40%. So, and depending on the cohort, 20 to 30 to 40% underrepresented founders. Sometimes we get 67 BIPOC, but some of those are overrepresented, as they say,
Sure.
South Asian or other backgrounds. So how do we really make people welcome? So that's been our intention. So that there's a couple things that we've done that are creative. One, we created an equity impact framework where when I came in, I've long thought, like, how do we not just celebrate increasing shareholder value as the greatest good in our world, but really we want, before that got a bit manipulated, companies are there to be stewards of their community and their employees and all these things. And of course, now the environment. Um, how do we better recognize that? So we created a scoring system where somebody came in as a founder and we'd give them a score based on what we saw and could read and the documentation they provided. And that would determine the equity stake we offer them. So it's 1.5 to 3%.
Okay.
So we put up, and at the same time, if we walk our talk on the data that says that more diverse-led companies lead to greater financial success and other data sets that we've pointed to, why should a earlier stage diverse founder team be penalized if there's true value, truth to that data? Because the data speaks for itself. So we had an example in our first cohort when we switched to cohort model and used this, where we had the same offering to a later stage all white male founder team. Guys look like me, 30 years younger probably. And then two Black female entrepreneurs. They got the same stake, the same price, cost of the program.
Yeah.
And then the thing we did on top of that is like you can earn back part of that equity stake for wealth generation, generational wealth opportunities for the
Right.
founders, for being able to recruit other talent. So we've really tried to be creative in how we walk our talk, and then later created a debt fund that doesn't require personal collateral or credit scores, where if you look at the institutional, racial, historical barriers to access to capital and the biases in the system,
Yeah.
they're real and they're significant. And then even if, so if you don't come from generational wealth, you don't own a home, you can't secure an SBA or loan or a bank loan. And if you can, it's pretty expensive, cost of capital. So we're loaning out, providing working capital loans at 9% for, you have to show your ability to repay, so you have to have some revenue stream, but we don't
Sure.
require personal collateral or credit scores. So we've just tried to be creative in how we can identify, recruit, and support.
Yeah.
underrepresented entrepreneurs and
Creative.
entrepreneurs. Period. Like this debt fund is something exciting for every entrepreneur that they don't have to lock down personal assets if they do have any.
Yeah, and
Leverage them.
in some sense, setting aside the demographic identifiers that we referred to already, the truth is those are probably under-supported founders, no matter where they come from, right?
Yes.
In the sense that they don't have access or easy access or ready access to the same capital that some with better profiles or other personal histories or financial benefits or privilege from their families or careers might have. So that's awesome. It doesn't sound just creative. It sounds, just as a compliment, I'll say it, just very intentional. Which obviously then is something if you can measure, right? Which then produces results long term. LACI, I talk about it all the time. Here's how I describe it to people around the country when it comes up. I always talk about it as like the catalytic organization around the green economy in the Western U.S. Right? And now, obviously, there's a lot more nuance to it than just that. It is an anchored organization here in Los Angeles, but it clearly has a national and global scope of influence to it. So if you could just give us kind of the pitch commercial of what LACI is, what its mission is, then there's some things I'd be more curious about that I'll ask you in follow up.
I think you did a good job, Rob. I'm going to borrow your description.
All right, we'll just stick with that then.
I'll give you the quick elevator pitch. It's our mission to create an inclusive green economy by unlocking innovation, by recruiting and supporting founders and startups and helping them scale, transforming markets through public-private partnerships, policy and pilots, and then enhancing communities through workforce training and affinity-focused efforts like women in clean tech and middle school girls provide more support and bring underrepresented populations into the green economy. So that's our strategy, our mission, our strategy. I think we are LA-based, we're LA-focused. At the same time, we've intentionally, as well as responsibly, extended our thought leadership nationally and a bit globally. When I came in, sort of the earlier story about how hard it is for cities to innovate with technology and related solutions, created a partnership with C40 that led to a report that we did at the Madrid Conference of Parties or the UN climate talks in 2019 that really showed the need for this type of a solution, and now we're executing it in the U.S. and working with cities around the globe, around the country. So I think that, and then the debt fund is national, and then we run our national incubator coalition. So we're committed to helping the ecosystem thrive, not just our ecosystem locally, but the overall clean tech ecosystem, because we think we benefit, as does the whole community, and of course the climate solutions, job creation, and economic development.
I love that. You mentioned in one of the prior answers, you mentioned like funds, right? A debt fund. So help us understand what does the financial picture look like at LACI, right? Like I know the story. I think I know the story. You could correct me if I'm wrong. Right, way back when, the beautiful campus that you have, the facility you have down in the Arts District, was a relationship with, I think it was the DWP, the Department of Water and Power, that had this facility. And so there was kind of some clever relationship that was built, like, here, you could use our facility for $1 a year, $1 for life, or something like that. Right. So a great public-private partnership example there. I would imagine, right, some of your funding partners and sources are combinations of government grants and programs, as well as then, are there private investors that are involved in some of these funds?
Yes.
Okay.
So, you told the story well. I mean, we started with this amazing campus that is catalytic in its own right, and we're blessed to be the stewards on behalf of the Department of Water and Power and the city of that resource for our startups, for our organization, for the campus community that's there. When it came in, we needed to diversify our funding. And so part of that was really, how do we get philanthropic and private sector support? So getting some of the nonprofit funding in place that didn't make us so reliant on the city was critical. And then getting investment, our ability to invest, to draw stronger entrepreneurs, was really critical. So we created our first venture fund, which is a sidecar fund, meaning we follow on uh, other lead investors. But the idea is we de-risk the startups for the incubation. We've added piloting, where companies get $20,000 to $30,000 for a pilot. We've added refined our curriculum. We've added an investor relations person. We've created executives in residence. So this ecosystem of support around the entrepreneur. But when they're out actively raising for a venture round, they're eligible to apply if they have a lead. We're not going to lead the round because the fund is so small. The first one was 5 million. The second one we're trying to get to 5 or 6. It is we don't hire we can't hire an investment manager with track record that the venture communities go, oh yeah, you guys can lead around. We're going to believe in you. So we worked with our investors to build that out, and the second fund, our first close at Arnold Schwarzenegger, and a couple, Adam and Melanie Lewis, who are generous philanthropists and investors, keen and savvy investors who joined our fund along with others. So we were able to invest in our startups as well as the what I call sweat equity. The sweat equity in exchange, there's some cash for it, but like the pilot is cash, and there's some equivalent of cash for technical services that they get in exchange for that warrant. And then the equity investment is separate, but follows on. They could get out. Not everybody gets it, but they can apply. And then the debt fund, similarly, we make our startups eligible after 4 months. The venture fund is after 6 months. And
How about that?
but the debt fund we've opened up to incubator partner organizations across the country. So there, it's philanthropic PRI capital from the Sobrato family philanthropies and a venture uh, uh, fund with one sole LP called Homecoming Capital. And so they've been our partners, along with some philanthropic partners to cover the OpEx costs, because we're not making money on the debt fund. We hope to make money in the venture fund, right? Obviously, we've got to show return for our investors.
No, I mean, and again, you're entering 500 different companies into your portfolio over time and continually adding to that each year with different programs. Obviously, there's an opportunity to do that long term. All right, couple programmatic questions. I want to give you a chance to highlight some of the things you're working on, but I want to slip one kind of just personally motivated question in there before we get to that. So we have a phrase, a saying, it used to be a hashtag on this platform that we will no longer name, right, in the world, called Long LA, or hashtag Long LA. And it's for those that don't know this, that are listening outside of Los Angeles, it's just a statement of belief is my interpretation of it, right? It's a statement of belief in our potential. It's a recognition of our strengths, but also our weaknesses and our flaws, and it's a literal long belief, akin to like you hold a stock long term and you just kind of forget about it because it's going to grow. It's that same kind of thing. I would love for you. I'm a Chicago born and raised guy, so I think it's like put in our blood, in our DNA as children, that we believe in the power of great cities. Right. So I've just brought all that passion and energy in my adult life here to Los Angeles. So I would love for you to help us understand the sort of positive influence that Los Angeles can have on the world's climate and energy innovations over the next 50 to 100 years. So it's going to long outlive you and I. But what are we doing now that gives Los Angeles the chance to truly be a beacon that supersedes all our transitional politics and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think whether it's Hollywood that leads to probably LA being the best known city in the world, or most recognized by me. There's arguments, but I remember when I worked for the mayor back between 2013 and 2017, there was some study that somebody had done about what's the best recognized city in the world. That the power of Hollywood, the power of that still sort of because of that the magic of Hollywood, but just the factor of we're the last frontier town. I wouldn't call us a frontier town now, but there's still a bit of that pioneer spirit that shows up, that you can remake yourself here. You can do anything here.
The West's most western city. Maybe it's not Scottsdale. Maybe it is Los Angeles.
Yeah. I think there's a bit of that. It's a vast region. We're the third largest metropolitan economy in the world. We're second largest city in, LA is the second largest city in America. Yet it's also, one of 88 cities across the county, a little over 10 million people, 1 million people live in an unincorporated county area, including people in Altadena, that's an unincorporated county. So I think it's in the economy, and we still have the most manufacturing jobs of any region in the country, metropolitan area. The ports of LA, 40% of the goods come in to LA from the port of LA and Long Beach. Of course, the tourism, this is a vast economic engine, and it is so iconic and the host of so many events, but really go back to that entrepreneurial spirit that is here. We don't have the strong venture capital ecosystem that is in the Bay Area and Silicon Valley, but it's growing. And Snap's, IPO began to really change that as people made money and started investing. Other liquidity events for startups have helped the same. At the same time, we lack really any major corporate headquarters. It's ironic, with Disney is really the only one in the region that's in Burbank. For the most part, most of the corporate presence here is regional office, not the headquarters. So how do you out of this incredibly vibrant and exciting, innovative regional economy that is disaggregated in terms of political geographies and governance, and lacks sort of the corporate center that we used to have in the 80s and into the 90s. How do we really do that? And I think that just reinforces that can-do pioneer entrepreneurial spirit. Like, okay, let's figure it out. We got to bring everybody together. And that's been what we've been trying to do in our regional partnerships. That's what we're trying to do on this commission, is really just, okay, get people to collaborate in a way they don't normally do in this region and figure out how to make our region a better place. And because we're so iconic and so big, we can influence lots of places.
Yeah.
And be a
I'll,
leader.
I'll give you a quick anecdote. I said this to somebody over the weekend on a walk. They were complaining about LAX, right? Like the easy complaint that people love to bemoan. And then I just kept refuting their complaints with, it's a friend, so it was a friendly argument, but I just kept refuting the complaints with like the level of the infrastructure investment in the project that's been ongoing for years and will be done here in some section
Transit
in the next 10
investments
years.
that's going on nowhere else in the country.
And I said, I made the argument like, hey, I mean, I like to think of it this way. Again, I'm a futurist. I'm pragmatic, but I'm an optimist, right? And I'm more interested in the legacies of what we're leaving behind for now my now 5-month-old grandson than I am worried about the things that I'm going to benefit from in the remaining 30 or 40 years of my or your life, right? And I said we could have built LAX, the more modern, up-to-date version of itself, back in the 60s and 70s, I guess, right? But then we'd be stuck with a 50, 60-year-old airport. But we're building it now, and I have to imagine what we're building it now, the way we're building it now, will be more sustainable, more efficient, more energy efficient, more useful, more economically sensible, right? So to me, there's some of the ironic things that we've not been good at. Maybe housing shortages, maybe not enough investment in certain areas, actually now gives us an opportunity to right those wrongs, right? And or to go back and recast those missed opportunities anew for the next 50 years and wind up having us then leading the way for other maybe Rust Belt cities or other places around the country that will have not built new airports and new infrastructure and new subway systems in the 2010s or 2020s, right? I mean, do you agree? Do you think I'm way off base?
Well, I think there's so much truth to that. We have, what is it, 120 billion? It was estimated out of Measure M for transit investments, the airport investments, and the car rental facility, the people circulator to not have to make everybody sit in the horseshoe.
Yeah.
All these historic and vast investments of private sector investment in Inglewood through the Intuit Dome that the Bombers did, and LA Rams, SoFi Stadium. It's there's so much going on here, and and so much opportunity to lead by example. Now, not everything is cutting edge, and but we do have good local codes and state policy that leads and helps encourage everybody that isn't necessarily living and breathing the climate solution orientation and commitment. But it's exciting to be here.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right, so a couple of example, like some specific things programmatically, and this is a perfect segue. Your organization has a zero emissions 2028 roadmap that you've developed, and this is related to the Paralympics and Olympics that are coming in August of 2028. So we've got some time. Tell us how that's helping us prepare to produce these events in like environmentally kind of net positive ways.
Yeah, so when we started our partnership, sat around a table down at the campus. We've been talking about Mary Nichols, who was chair of the California Air Resources Board, and a guy named Ron Nichols. They're not related, but he was
that's,
president.
that's random.
How do we get the region working together and really accelerate progress? And so we said, all right, let's create something and give birth to it at LACI. Um, we would fund it with commitments from the private sector and companies, and uh, but more importantly, set ambitious goals and work together across the region to go after it on a project level and a policy level. Um, and so we were able to get this thing together. It was sort of like regional collaboration isn't all that sexy, but it was a big deal. And we launched it initially in 2018 and then updated the roadmap in 2019 and came up with very specific targets, all towards getting an additional 25% greenhouse gas and air pollution reduction um, from transportation, the largest source of air pollution in the region and greenhouse gases. So we set a goal of 80% of the cars to be sold by 2028 to be all electric. We set a target of 40% of the diesel dredge trucks to be converted to zero emissions, and then specific targets for number of chargers and a number of other things we put in place. And then later we did a version of that for clean energy. It was all about how do we get to 100% clean energy while ensuring the grid it's resilient while meeting the needs of building decarbonization and transportation electrification. So we've done this a couple of times. It really gets the policymakers around with the private sector leaders to figure out how we're going to do this. And we may not hit every one of those targets, but we got to have our grasp exceed our reach to
Right.
try to push for bigger things
That's
and for
awesome.
better solutions and outcomes.
If we're gonna build, let's build better, right? That's got to be the mantra. All right, so I've made it obvious. I'm a big believer of cities, right, and cities as leaders. So in this diminished kind of federal interest and federal support for climate initiatives, and frankly, as you said, just science in general, apparently, they're two city-based initiatives that you're involved in that I would love for you to help us understand. So one is you presently serve as the board chair of the Climate Mayors Group, which is a bipartisan organization of more than 350 mayors, 46 different states, so pretty much everywhere. Tell me, help us understand, like, what are our cities and our mayors doing to lead the way forward?
Yeah, so we created this organization when I worked for Mayor Garcetti. We wanted mayors to come together on climate, share ideas. There was a global organization called C40 that helps global mayors work together. At the time, there was probably 10 cities that were part of that in the U.S. But there's obviously need for more domestic effort. And uh, at the time, the White House, under President Obama, wanted this set of mayors to come together to put wind at the back as they went into Paris. So we started the Paris Climate Agreement negotiations, which were in 2015. We started in 2014, started with really the most committed, strongest big and small cities to climate. And then 2016, so then it played a role in helping get the Paris Climate Agreement deal happening, reinforcing some of the discussions with China and the US. Election happens 2016. Like, oh, okay, well, let's start by sending an open letter to President-elect Trump and saying, hey, be our climate president. At the time, everybody was speculating what he was going to do, and he said he was open. Then it quickly became clear, not open, going to really do things like get out of the Paris Agreement. And so we really prepared mayors to respond, and we grew to 70 mayors at the time by opening the tent a little bit. Okay, you have a goal, you have some sort of action plan, and you're going to report on the progress. Before you had to have an annual municipal greenhouse gas emissions inventory to be a member, things that a lot of cities need to do, but not everybody can do. Um, so we opened the tent, and then I used to get up every morning at 5 a.m. to check the president's schedule to see if there was something that looked like the he was going to pull out of the Paris Agreement that day, and we had this pre-baked statement of mayors: we're adopting the Paris Climate Agreement in our city. We're going to lead by
Okay.
example, continue the action. And June 1st, 2017, he did the press conference. We pushed out the press release. I remember CNN had a story about the climate mayors commit to sort of the what do they call that?
The Chiron on the bottom.
Yeah, Chiron.
Yeah, yeah.
And as he was speaking in the Rose Garden, and we went from there. We grew from 70 to 170 mayors in 24 hours, and
Wow.
400 within a month. And
Wow.
anyway, so we built out the organization. We now have an executive director, I think 4 staff, and helping mayors across the country. Our current chair is Mayor Gallego out of Phoenix. She's a great climate leader. Previous chair was Mayor Justin Bibb out of Cleveland, another great climate leader. Both problem solvers, both want to get stuff done.
And 400 mayors, I got to imagine, right? There are Republicans in there as much as
Yeah,
there are Democrats in there.
for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a handful of Republicans, but it is bipartisan. The mayor of Miami's long been a Republican, but has always been a strong leader on climate, given the vulnerability.
Yep. I was going to say he better have been, or else he's not going to be a mayor of much for long. All right, so the second city-related thing, and you referenced it earlier, but now I want to unpack it a little bit. LACI's a part of a group that's leading this new effort called the City Climate Innovation Challenge. As of my scripting, there were 9 major U.S. cities that are involved. Maybe that number is greater now. So tell us, what is this program about, and then what kind of outcomes can we expect from the challenge?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier this report we did with C40 and PwC did the research for us, showing we could create a $5 trillion market globally and further reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 35% if we better help the city invite climate innovation and then scale what works. At the time, there was this, particularly in LA and Santa Monica, this just inundation of micromobility solutions showing up on the streets and sidewalks every day. It seemed
Yes.
it was partially in response, like, how do you invite innovation rather than let innovation happen to cities? But as we grew out the concept and deployed it in the U.S. with C40 and climate mayors around, our first challenge is zero emissions delivery. We saw a need for cities collaborate through these 2 organizations, climate mayors and C40, all the time on topics, but they weren't going in and actually getting their hands dirty together on projects.
Okay.
To be able to see what solutions work and then help scale them with the private sector and emerging, startups. So that's what's different. So we create these innovation sandboxes in these different cities and seek, the technology is going to solve the problem that city wants to solve. Some of the cities want to solve last mile micromobility based delivery, all electric. And so there's different, battery storages, bike storages, different form factors on that last mile, or like the New York example of trying to reduce pollution from big diesel trucks and getting those to convert to all electric or zero emissions. So that's really exciting. I think we're continuing to lean in and learning a bunch, and I think you'll see a lot of great stuff scale out of it, and good companies help grow and create those.
I love that. I love the connection of like, hey, we've had success at LACI with our sandbox concept of bringing people in to get their hands dirty, roll their sleeves up proverbially, and then here you have this clear kind of just policy group, which is still important, right? But policy group, and then you see, wait a minute, like how can we create a subset of that community to help get these people sandboxing with each other so that real things come out of these policy debates and meetings that we're having. That's awesome. There's one question I'm going to finish, and we're just going to hit you with the last closing segment question and send you on your way this afternoon. Really appreciate, super grateful for this time. Fighting through the cold and the sniffles and all that. I really appreciate that. So one last kind of general question that I was going to ask actually, but you just made me think of it because you mentioned in passing New York. And that made me think of something I want just your kind of hot take on the moment of, right, we had this big kind of, I don't even call it a controversy, we had this big realization over the last couple of months of congestion pricing on traffic into Manhattan, as I understood it, right? And lots of controversy around it for all the normal kind of NIMBY-ish reasons, as well as Republican, Democratic divides. And then and the government or the governor forced it to happen eventually, kind of over the will of and now it's being rescinded and the president's fighting about it. All that aside, just the idea from a climate, environmental, economic standpoint, like the idea of congestion pricing to me just seems like a good idea. And having said that, I'm the guy that doesn't own a car and takes public transit, so maybe I'm not the guy to complain. But like, it does seem like a fundamentally sound policy that actually makes a huge difference. Bless you. Is that true? Is it an actual good policy?
It's making a huge difference. You've already seen reduced congestion and therefore pollution in New York and Manhattan, where it's the areas that fall under the congestion zone. You've also seen enormous success, both with congestion and pollution pricing in London, where there's just been enormous gains on pollution reduction. And of course, in each of these, you've got funding strategies that help support public transit. And it really is critical. And so part of the question for each of these set of policymakers is, all right, how do you help those that can't afford to transition or have to come in? How do you help them? So those equity equalizers are really key. But it's been a huge success already. And, I hope, telling people they can't drive their car in LA may seem like
you set me up. That was going to be the last part of that. Is like, I mean, do we see stuff like that ever come to a place like super car dependent freeway cities like LA or Houston, Texas, or Phoenix or anything?
Well, I think we're starting in LA is back to that zero emissions delivery zone concept we started with Santa Monica and LA is zero emission delivery curb spaces only. And so we're moving the direction to enforce the curb in Santa Monica and LA by that these curb spaces where a delivery provider can use and park without being charged or a reduced fee. We've seen this be successful from a financial generation standpoint in the city of Pittsburgh. And because of privacy concerns around automated license plate readers in California, which some cities approach differently, that haven't gotten to enforcement, but we're confident that the cities could get tens of millions of dollars in revenue. I mean, UPS, FedEx, Amazon, they pay millions and millions and millions of dollars every day in parking tickets.
Right.
So if they can find a place to park and use it as a delivery hub or in more dense urban areas, we think it could be a success here. So it's not congestion pricing, but it's a step in that.
It's kind of an adjacency to it. Last question, and we'd always love to make the last question kind of specific, bullet pointish. I'm gonna make that hard for you just because I really want your opinions on this. In this climate that we have talked around now for an hour, right? This where science has been politicized and economic opportunity is politicized and who's to be advantaged or not advantaged is politicized and all that stuff. In your just life experience as a leader that you've been, can we condense it down to like 2 or 3 bits of guidance or advice that you can give to all of us to think about how we can depoliticize something as obvious as science and the benefits of green technology?
There's no easy answer to that question because it's become a culture war. I would say though,
maybe in our local communities, right? Like so.
Yeah, no, the answer to me is even if you're not a startup entrepreneur, which to me the answer to the question is stay focused and be persistent. Yeah. That's the key to your success. Don't get distracted because the pendulum will swing and the political tenor will change.
And I'm gonna speak for you, so you correct me, but like science is science, like economic opportunity is economic. These are just facts, and ultimately facts and truth win out. So stay determined, stay focused, keep your head down.
In terms of individual citizens, I used to talk a lot about be a citizen entrepreneur, take responsibility for a corner of your world, and do whatever you can to make it better. It doesn't mean you have to start a nonprofit or, go work for a nonprofit or whatever, but to take if you see a challenge, you want to solve it, figure it out, like just do something. And it could be in partnership with other people. It doesn't mean everybody has to be a leader, but, join in and get others to join you. Like it was fun. Saw a lot of great stories from citizen entrepreneurs across the country back when I used to run that challenge, and it's inspiring. We see these heroes every day.
Yeah, I used to give when I give speeches around Latin America, trying to encourage entrepreneurship. I used to say to the entrepreneurs in the audience, right? If you want to, everybody wants to go global. Everybody wants to go to the big market, right? I say, if you want to start global, start local, right? If you're unsure about what to work on, or if you're trying to ideate and you're taking the bus to this university tomorrow to meet me to have the speech, take a little notepad on your bus trip and write down 10 or 12 things that you see that aren't working, right, in your community or that aren't working on your city streets. And scribble those ideas down, because that's where you'll find ideas, opportunities for innovation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's awesome. All right. Hey, how can folks find you, follow you? What's the LACI website? Any of that stuff that you want to share with us?
Find me on LinkedIn, personally. It's where, seemingly more and more postings are happening these days, given the
Yes, I believe
platform shifts. And as you saw, I posted my son's latest song. You can check it out
awesome.
there. At LACI, it's laci.org. Check it out. Our incubation program, our workforce training program, we take applications fairly consistently throughout the year. And you can at least sign up for email and get notified when our applications are open, and see how you could be part of the green economy.
That's great. Thank you so much. This has been a blast. Thank you. Thanks for going a little extra time with us here. Thanks for enduring the cold. You're truly, in my humble opinion, again, you are one of the entrepreneurial thinkers of the city, of the region, of the country, and we need 100 more of you everywhere. So I'm grateful for you spending some time with us today.
Thanks, Rob. Really appreciate you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did recording it. As always, we thank you so much for listening and watching. Today's show was recorded here in Los Angeles and produced by the incomparable Deanna Bernal in Mexico City. We can only grow this show by you listening and sharing the show with friends. So please find, follow, subscribe, and share our audio-only show on Spotify, Apple, or via any other popular podcasting platforms, as well as find the video version of our show now available on our YouTube channel over at Entrepreneurial Thinkers. And of course, you can follow along on our various social media platforms for fun and informative clips and content at Entrepreneurial Thinkers, wherever you can find us. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me at I Am Rob Ryan on just about any social media platform. Gracias, thank you, and have an awesome day.